Now we are live.
Okay. Okay.
I think the stars are not aligned today with all the
Yes,
technical glitches, but
that's okay.
let's just redo the entire thing.
Sure.
Uh, uh, Welcome back to 3Years LLB YouTube channel, Pooja.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank
And
you.
I'm really excited to have you back. It's always it's fun having a conversation with you.
Thank
And
you.
heartiest congratulations. We did have
Thanks.
session on the day NLSAT 2026 results were announced, but we nevertheless wanted to do a detailed story so that we can take it out there and it can
Mhm.
inspire a lot of other students. So let's just start with a brief introduction and then we'll start to delve onto the details, different aspects in detail.
Sure, sure. I have a slightly different profile than most of the students that are at LE. I had a bit of experience in education and then come on to law. So I have an undergraduate degree in economics and business from Bombay, St. Xavier's. And then I went to London School of Economics and I have a master's in finance and risk, after which I worked in investment banking doing mergers and acquisitions in London for about 8.5, 9 years, so almost a decade. And I always liked law at that point because my work involved a lot of legal documents and a lot of public processes and so on. So it was always a latent interest, which I didn't have the courage to take forward at that point. And after about the end of towards the end of my career, I felt I needed a change and it wasn't the right fit for me anymore. So then I delved into economics and mathematics, which was my previous training. So to go into research and academia. So then I did that for a few years. I have a degree in mathematics and a postgraduate degree in economics. But then at some point, it just didn't feel right. In the meantime, I got married, I had a child, and then I reevaluated my priorities in life. And I really did want to go back to law. And I had moved back to India as well due to family dynamics and circumstances. So I then did this course called the Masters in Business Law, which is an online course at NLS Bangalore, just to sort of whet my appetite to see if law was really the degree for me, which I thoroughly enjoyed immensely. So after the first year, I started preparing for the entrances, and so the rest is history.
So I think let's just start um, with the uncertainty involved. And I think with time, with age, the risk taking appetite, it takes a toll. We are not that, we do not really comfortable with change, uncertainty. So, how difficult was it for you to let go of a job and to decide to prepare for one of the most competitive examinations? And as we grow and once we start to earn, it becomes extremely addictive. And
Yeah.
then we lose touch with reading books, taking mocks, getting into a routine when all you have to do is just study and with no immediate returns. So how
Yeah.
difficult was it for you to get into that headspace wherein I remember having discussions with you, we taking mocks, you traveled all the way to write an all India open mock, to get into a headspace where all you're doing is just preparing for an entrance examination wherein you're not very certain of the results as well. There's no immediate gratification.
Mm. I think the first and foremost is to surround yourself with a very supportive with a big support system. I have a family that's very, very supportive, and primarily I have a spouse that has always championed me. So when I was unhappy in banking, he was the first one to say, I don't see why you're doing this. I know we're addicted to the lifestyle because, of course, we were doing really well at that time. And he's like, I know you're addicted to this lifestyle. It's very glamorous, it's very well paying, but it's also a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of travel, a lot of things that are not so great too. So you're absolutely right. It's so easy to be addicted to the salary and the lifestyle. And if I didn't have him, literally pushing me to the light, as it were, and being a pillar of support, I don't think I would have taken this drastic step. So having that support system and having that person who believes in you before you believe in yourself is I've been very, very lucky, and I really do owe him a lot of my success, or in fact all of my success to him. So that I think that was the first step. And the moment you're able to recognize that this is not a good fit, I'm unhappy in my current circumstances, to then just take a step, a leap of faith into whatever it is. We live one life, and with living such long spans today, we don't die at 50 anymore, right? So we live up to 75. We need to have this ability to keep going on. a job cannot be just a means to an end. I mean, sure, you have to have security, and I did that in the first few years of my life, of my adult life. But as you keep chugging along, you get very unhappy, and once you sort of face the truth of it all, then you're okay to sort of break the mold of security and safety. And the best part is we all have education, we all have skills, we all have experience. What's the worst? You fail. You always can go back to that and you can try something else. It's just a matter of taking that first step, and it's the universe usually follows. As long as you're looking for something that drives you, that gives you sort of inspiration to get up in the morning and do something, that's the greatest gift you can give yourself. I know it sounds very philosophical,
No, I think it
but
sounds
truly that's the
practical too at the same point in time, because
yeah.
I think after a point in time, you have to take that shot. You cannot just continue to procrastinate thinking that what if, what if, what if. So I think
Yeah.
something I tell my students as well, so it's better to that you take a chance and regret it
Yeah.
versus you regret it without having given it a shot. And I think it
Yeah.
was such a viral moment. You mentioned your spouse, and it's so important to have a supportive partner. I'm pretty certain, like from a very Gen Z perspective, we just put it on Instagram, it's going to go viral. Um, with like different variations, adaptations of it, but
Yeah.
very heartening to know.
Yeah.
And more so specifically, I think the courage to finally give something an attempt. So as you said, leap of faith. And I keep telling my students that it's absolutely fine to take a gap year.
Yeah.
Interestingly, coincidentally, I was having this conversation with a student, and the student went like that, listen, I'm 23, it'll take me like 3 years more of graduation. I cannot go for a gap year. And it's like, calm down. You calm down.
Yeah, life is long.
You
Yeah.
still have a very long way to go, and it's absolutely fine to take a gap year, reassess where you are, and then commit yourself to anything, and then see versus you just jump onto anything, jump onto say like the next decision, and then regret it later. So it's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, I think students, they need to start normalizing taking gap year and switching careers, no matter where they are in terms of their career trajectory.
That's
How
right.
difficult was it for you to get into that headspace of preparing for a competitive examination? NLSAT is one of the toughest entrances that we're talking about, more so specifically with a subjective element involved, a subjective component involved. It always gets slightly more difficult than a lot of
Mhm.
aptitude objective based examinations. So how difficult
Mhm.
was it for you to get into that headspace zone wherein a lot of your day is not occupied with, say, like doing transactions, working, with studying with physical books
Mhm.
or
Um,
taking marks?
So I think because I sort of explored academia before I did this, I was already in that study mode. So the first year, right after quitting my job and then moving into a proper full-time course where I was doing postgraduate diploma in economics, it was hard. But then I enjoyed the process of learning. That's something I always liked. So that appealed to me. And part of the thing that I didn't like so much about my job was I didn't just have a chance to sit and think and sort of get a sense of things and just read and learn. You were starting to do a lot of the same things again and again. So I think education gave me the chance to take a pause and think about the world and think of possibilities, thinking outside the box. And so because I already had made that transition, and then I did the MBLs, which gave me perspective into law and how to study for a law exam. So writing the MBL exams, a lot of it is like the case study portion, the subjective portion of the NLS. Surely it's a lot more complex because they expect you to have learned the material a lot more. Here, they don't expect you to have a legal background. But in a sense, it doesn't follow a very dissimilar trajectory. So I think that really helped. The other thing I told you before as well when we were talking about the preparation for NLSAT, I found it a very enjoyable exam to prepare for because it really makes you, how the faculty describes, you need to be generally aware. So you really do need to know a little bit of everything.
A little
And
bit of
that
everything.
I found very, very enjoyable. There were so many things that I thought I knew, but I really didn't. So that's the thing. When I was studying for this exam, I said, listen, whether I succeed or not, I come out a more knowledgeable person, and I actually enjoyed the process because it felt like I wasn't, like a UPSC exam or something on those lines. There's a lot of rote learning. Here there was less rote learning. It was more about understanding something. So even if it was something that was topical or trending, you needed to know the background of it, the context of it in the context of politics, in the context of history, in the context of sociology, and so on. So I find that very interesting. And I think that's why this exam is so different from other competitive exams that exist in India, at least, because it's not just a lot of rote learning. It's true application of what you know.
All students who are attending the session, if you have any questions for Pooja, for me, for us, you can feel free to drop it in the chat box. We're more than happy to take the questions. Coming back, so I still remember my first conversation with you, and you went like, "Listen, guys, I'm placing my trust in you, so I hope you guys live up to it." And I think I'm quoting you verbatim. So how has been the experience so far? I think we've had like multiple rounds of discussion with regard to different things. And so how was your experience with LegalEdge with us, and how would you describe that journey?
So I'll preface a little bit that I was with somebody else, coaching wise, and they promised me the sun, and then it didn't quite pan out. So that's when I did a little bit of research, and I came across LegalEdge, and I mean, right off the bat, it was just a very different conversation. I spoke to someone who picked up the phone at what I would describe your customer service or sales person, Harshita, I think her name was, and then I spoke to Shubi, who reassured me a little bit more. Then I spoke to you, and then I just really felt that you guys really had a sense of what you were doing. And that was very reassuring. And again, I was also going to give my symbiosis exam in about 10 days or a week when I called you guys. And at that point, I didn't really expect anything from you guys, but there was so much of information and so much of support. And I remember Shubi just calling me at that time even and just talking me through it. And that was just within like a week or 10 days of joining you guys. So I was very reassured, and it was very heartening to see that, you guys really take the effort and put in the time and make sure that you deliver what you say you would. And then even for the NLSAT, the feedback that I got on Part B, particularly there was this one, I don't know who he is, but he gave such wonderful, detailed feedback. I really wish I could pick up the phone and talk to him and say, thank you so much. This is like, because he would actually write a little paragraph saying, I like the idea that you've, alluded to here and how you've enunciated it, but if you changed it just a little bit here, it would be superlative and things like that. It was very helpful commentary, not just the bare minimum, okay, you get X marks for this. So I really appreciated that. And things like you would have so many times come out to me and say, what can I help you with, right? And I would say, oh, listen, I feel like I'm not doing so great on this part. Can I do a little more current affairs? Can we do a little more legal stuff? And you always came back and delivered. So I think that is the key thing that I appreciated most, that you guys were available all the time. I still remember you messaging at around midnight or 2 a.m. or something on the night before saying, guys, we're still alive and we're awake. If you are anxious, just call us. We'll talk you through it. I think that is such a big aspect of it, because this is a very competitive exam, as you put it, and it helps to have that reassurance and to be able to fill the gaps as and when you're moving along. So I'm very grateful that I chose this.
That's the most rewarding part for us as well. I think the least we can do is be there for, because I understand, the entire team understands how taxing it gets to prepare for a competitive examination, because you're technically doing the same thing again and again, again and again. And when you kind of don't see those mock scores, or for any XYZ reason you could not get a question correct, it takes a mental toll. The least we can do is be there for our students. And I think that's what the entire team lives up to. Ranks, scores are all ancillary. I think all we expect that on the day of the examination, the student feel that they've given their best, and the team was there to root for them, to support them through and through. Rest, whether you succeed or you don't in a competitive examination, is contingent on a lot of variables.
Hmm.
Uh,
True.
so,
Out of your
on
control, even.
yes,
So,
there are a lot of factors not within your control. So on the day of the examination, the primary focus should just be that I put in the effort like the entire year, and these are the things that we've worked on, and essentially we should just feel content that we've given our best. And most specifically with Part B, I think the entire team, we've really experienced people, and they put in a lot of effort to evaluate your Part B and give as objective feedback as possible, and not vague feedback like, listen, this could have been better, but what is something that the team tries and answer.
mhm.
Quickly coming back to your, how would you allocate your time to your Part A preparation and your Part B preparation, and how did the priority look like, so that all students will be appearing for NLSAT in 2027, they can take notes and they could
Yeah.
accordingly align their effort?
I think I found the hardest part, or rather the most challenging part, was the general knowledge part. So it was quite varied and very wide, and it just seems you don't really have a set syllabus, right? So you don't know, okay, I have to just, rote learn this and I'll be good. So that is the part can be really challenging. So I remember saying this last time as well. The biggest advice I can say is read, and read anything at all, anything that you like, and try to keep a very diverse profile in that sense, where you read fiction, all sorts of fiction from across the world, and reading the newspaper every day, preferably a good quality one like a Hindu or an Indian Express. I mean, those are things I sort of did anyway. I'm a fairly voracious reader. So I had read Heartland even before I thought about writing the NLSAT or even
I
considered
remember
a.
having that discussion with you on the day of the examination.
Yeah, I mean, we both said that, right? So I'm so
Yes,
sure Heartland was going to
yes.
come somewhere or the other.
We're pretty
So
certain that given NLSAT's obsession with books and authors, and just a very literary aspect in general, we're pretty
yeah,
certain that
yeah,
there would be at least a question or a passage on something similar to it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we think that's exactly what happened. Yes, please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think if you've solved the past papers, you'll start to see a pattern. So it'll seem like it's an endless ocean, but once you start solving the patterns, you slowly start seeing, okay, these are the sort of things they largely focus on. I find it's in the last sort of 3 months, before the exam, that the sort of trending ideas, with, of course, the history and the context of those ideas, they tend to get repeated a lot. And the other thing I find is, even when you're reading the newspapers, right, you'll start to get a sense, okay, I think this might be important. I think this might show up, right? So I feel if you do that over the year, you definitely get in a good space. So that's sort of the bit about Part B. If you're not somebody who's a fast reader or someone who's used to solving a lot of reading comprehension, sort of English language heavy type questions, that's something perhaps you need to focus on. I focus less on it because I'm like I said, I like reading. So
Background, you could leverage your background. I mean, so
yeah,
you
exactly.
decent
So
command of
language
language
was
is
not
your
an
forte,
issue.
a
Yeah,
command over language. So again, I
yeah.
think that's how a lot of times students they have this question that when exactly should they start preparing for NLSAT? I think that's a very objective question. If you do a very uh, strength weakness analysis, SWOT analysis for yourself, and if at all you're not comfortable with language, reading those dense passages, you zone out after a point in time. It's and language, do not really have like a decent command over language, you
Mm-hmm.
should by default give NLSAT at least like a year prep, because then a lot of
Mm-hmm.
shoulder is a lot of pressure is off your shoulders.
Yeah.
NLSAT as an examination expects you to build skills,
Mm-hmm.
reading, comprehension, then answer writing itself is a skill. So I think you leveraged your background really well,
Yeah.
and then you identified the limitations really well, and then you continued. Because I remember, I think I'd analyzed one of your answer writing copies and remember having this conversation that I think it started off really well, but somewhere you
Oh
lost.
yeah, the in-person All India mock. I just
Yes,
blanked because I
yes.
guess I was tired. I don't know what, but
Somewhere
I
along
got
the
so
way,
distracted. So yeah.
because you start to build expectations. As mentors, we keep a tab of every student's performance, and if some student is performing really well and then all of a sudden you see that the performance for any XYZ reason, so we will always reach out to the student, try and check in that, listen, hey, is it because you were under prepared, or is it something else? So identify it so it does not happen on the day of the examination. Commit as many mistakes as you can before the examination so that you've exhausted the entire quota for the day. So I remember asking you that, listen, what happened? Because I think it was it was analytical essay that, listen,
That's
you
right.
started
Yeah.
off really well, but somewhere
Yeah.
along the line you lost.
I got lost in the
And
weeds.
yes,
Yeah.
and I can't really see a lot of thought logic here, which is very unlike you because
Mm.
you're good with it. So I think you worked on the limitations really well, and you've leveraged
Yeah.
your background really, really well.
Yeah.
It's a very fun conversation, Pooja. I think
Yeah.
any suggestions for our
Just to add to that,
Yes,
the two things I would also add to the prep bit is starting early with the mocks makes such a huge difference because you really do understand what you're not so good at and what you're great at, right? And then you can sort of leverage yourself. And the other thing is definitely do a in-person one. That OMR stuff is more deadly than you think. That is the single biggest advice that I think, greatest advice that you gave me is, do one physical mock, and I had to travel to another city to do it. But I'm so grateful I did that because I would not have been able to manage on the day if I had not done that.
I'm really appreciative of it actually. That
Yeah.
I
So
remember that we'd rescheduled AIM as well, but you still made it. So
yeah.
two very, I think, extremely important for all students who will be appearing for NLSAT 2027,
Mhm.
that do not procrastinate taking mocks. I think a lot of students start taking mocks towards February, January, but that what essentially happens is that there's a lot of pressure. You do not
Mm.
really have ample time to work on your weaknesses. So even if you do not feel that you've done anything, just take a mock to at least build some comfort. And then very organically and regularly, you continue to build and work on your mistakes. Second, I think there's no alternative to actually assessing yourself in an offline ecosystem. Because NLSAT is an offline, it happens in an offline ecosystem. And for all students who think it's a 150 minutes paper, it's not. You essentially get just 130, 135 minutes, plus the
Yeah.
pressure of marking, of filling the bubble incorrect.
Yeah.
Uh, so you
All the
should
while the
really do it.
invigilator is constantly
Yes.
telling you some instruction. And I'm just like, stop yapping. I try to focus and do something here. But yeah.
And you have to fill the attendance sheet and everything. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
offline mocks are a very essential part of your preparation. And but I'll appreciate that certain all India open mocks where you could not make it to the offline center, you still took the
I took
mocks.
every one of them. I just couldn't get to a physical center every time I got to them.
Yeah.
I did one in person. Yeah.
Yes, yes. A Bangalore, I believe, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were saying
So,
something.
no, I said the one other thing by doing it in person is I realized because I blanked out for the very analytical essay that's when I realized that I shouldn't do that because that required the most amount of thinking. So then
Yes.
I changed my strategy right after that because I would do the analytical essay first, get the most, because whatever you do first in the subjective part of the paper, you end up taking the most amount of time. And I would realize that I would do the first case study with like much gusto. And then by the time I was coming to the fifth one, it would get even more and more succinct each
Saturate,
time.
basically. There's a cognitive
Yeah.
burnout by the time you've already
Yeah.
read
And then you're
eight
starting
dense
to worry
passages.
about time. You're
Yes,
starting
yes.
to worry. So then I said, okay, the thing that needs the most amount of words is the analytical essay. So I then started doing the analytical essay first, which then you can, take a sweet time with it. And then once you're under time pressure, the case studies are easier because there's already a thought process that they're
To
pushing you
apply.
towards. Yeah.
Analytical essay, it
Analytical essay is
just
more
assesses.
open-ended. So you
Yes.
need to take a moment, jot down some ideas and say, okay, this is the sort of organization that I want to do. And then once you've got that, then write the essay out. So messing up that physical mock made all the difference for me because I think, like you said, I made all my mistakes before the exam rather
For
than
the
on the
exam.
day of my exam. Yeah.
And the analytical essay, it assesses the length and breadth of your knowledge, your intellect. And so
Yeah.
that is why we essentially suggest students that approach part B and like take them as two sections only. One is a case study and one is an analytical essay. And actually the effort to reward ratio is higher for case studies because it's like
Yeah.
60 marks. So just ensure that in an attempt to score like really high in an analytical essay, you do not lose out on that. So and yeah, but I think very articulate, very well explained that that's how you strategize. So a lot of
Mm.
students, they're actually scared that what if we don't score? But that's essentially the point, that mocks, they don't just test you, they train you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of takeaways that you essentially work on, and that's how you improve from one mock to another. So I hope all students attending, watching the session, guys, it's absolutely non-negotiable for you to take mocks and start taking mocks. I think May is about the right time that you start taking at least a mock a month, and then towards as and when you approach your examination, you consistently increase the frequency of taking mocks. Okay, Pooja. On that note, just like any piece of advice for NLSAT 2027 aspirants to summarize anything.
Just believe in yourself. You deserve to be here. Read the newspaper. Just read a lot, because you can practice writing, but if you read a lot, your writing will improve, both in terms of knowledge and how you craft your sentences and how you craft your answers. So I think that is the single biggest advice, and just read a lot. I think that makes all the difference.
Thank you so much, Pooja. It's always
Pleasure.
super fun to interact with you. I think
Thanks.
learning is a two-way process, so we learn
Yeah.
a lot from each other. And I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to seeing you at NLS. Finally, I think MBL program was online, so you will finally.
Yeah, it was entirely online. I finished the first year. The second year is just drawn to a close, but I've pushed giving the final exam, which would have been due in 2 weeks, just because I was a little burnt out from all this prep. But it's a little more flexible as a program, so I can give it a little later.
And NLS was your test center as well, right? Your examination center.
Yeah, I chose to go there because I felt more comfortable going there because I'd already given exams in the past.
Life has come full circle now.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to, and you're going to have a blast. I think NLS is a dream law school for every aspirant out there, and that with the AIR 32. So
and one other thing I'd like to add is surround yourself by people who are positive and support your dream. However ridiculous it may sound to other people, ignore it.
It should make sense to you. It should make sense to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You do not owe an explanation.
Find your village, find your support system, find friends or family who are not judgmental. Right? That makes all the difference in the world.
And as mentors also, we are here. As mentors also, we are here rooting for you through and through.
Yes,
we generally had.
That's part of the support system. Yeah.
We genuinely had people from all walks of life. I mean, we've catered to people as old as 43, 54, 19, 21. So the age spectrum has been this wide. And I think everything eventually boils down to us being there for our students. That's the only thing that matters. Rest, ranks, selections, these are ancillary, but by the end of it, you should just feel content with your preparation. Thank you so much, Pooja. We'll continue. We'll of course
Thank you so much, Karan.
We'll continue to interact and have a great day. Thank you for your time.
Thanks again. Thanks everyone.
Yes.